A tale of two villages, one to the west and one to the east. Today, we're drinking two sides of the same mountain. Hey everyone, Sigi here. I love all things Pu'er, and I'm here today to share some of my experiences and knowledge with you. Today, we have a bit of a special treat here. The Pu'er project at nannuoshan is still going on, and I'm bringing you another video today in the context of that. The last time I tried a very old tea, today we're having something a bit younger. I have here with me two teas from the Linzang region, which are the Shi Banshan and the Dong Banshan. These teas were harvested in 2013. They are produced by a factory called Feng Ya Ming Yuan Tea Company. I think Gabriele already talked about that one in some of his other videos. And a Bing of either of these costs 102 euros, with 50 grams being available for 19 euros. Now, what's so interesting about these two teas? As a matter of fact, both of these teas are from the same mountain, just from different sides of the mountain. Shi Banshan is from the west side of the mountain, and Dong Banshan is from the east side of the mountain. So our plan today is going to be to just try both of these teas, see what their similarities are, what the differences are, and kind of get an overall impression for these two productions right here. It's not often that you get to taste teas from very nearby areas that were also produced by the same producer and harvested in the same year. So when it comes to figuring out what the let's say terroir is of that particular area, then this is going to be a very good comparison. And because we're comparing teas today, I decided to not use my trusty old pot, but rather these two gaiwans. They're not the exact same, obviously, as you can see right here, but their size is about the same, and I'm going to use the same ratio and hopefully the same steep times for both. And that should give us a decent basis for comparison. I've already preheated these gaiwans, so we are basically ready to pull out the tea, get this rinsed, and get started with our session. I'm probably going to do a couple of steeps of each and just give you my initial impression. So first off, I have the Dong Banshan here, the eastern village. Giving this a smell here, it smells quite fruity here in the bag. Very pleasant. It doesn't have that sort of vegetal harshness that a lot of younger Sheng has. This is already 8 years old after all. Okay, very nice smell. I'm gonna go for about 5 grams, I think. Because these gaiwans are not very large, should both be about 100 milliliter. Right, we've got 5.3, so just a bit more. Back into the bag. Alright, and that is 5 grams of Dong Banshan. Gonna put that one in here. We're gonna smell those in a moment. I'm now going to smell the Shi Banshan in the bag to see if there are any immediately noticeable differences. It has a very similar fruitiness from this bag smell, but I'd say it smells a bit fresher in a way, slightly more refreshing. Right, let's go for 5 grams here. When it comes to availability, if I remember correctly, Gabriele told me that they do have a decent amount of the Dong Banshan available, but not a lot of the Shi Banshan anymore. So that might be something to keep in mind for all of you dear viewers. Let's see, 4.8, we are getting close. Just a bit more. 5.0, there we go. That's what we like to see. So here we've got 5 grams of the Shi Banshan, and those are going into this guy one. Alright, let's set all of this aside and give these to a rinse. I'm gonna start with the Dong Banshan. I'm gonna give it a smell right after the rinse because I really want to get the differences in aroma between these two. Because from the initial smell, we can already sort of take a guess at what the teas are going to be like, and if they're going to be very similar or very different. Okay, this is taking a moment to come apart. The compression on this isn't particularly tight, but when I rinse my pot, I sometimes like to shake it around and do stuff like that, which obviously isn't possible with a Gaiwan. Alright, so this is the first rinse. Let's see what we can smell here. I'm gonna start with the lid. The lid is giving me a very sweet tobacco leaf with maybe a bit of honey in the background. Quite sweet, quite light. Let's see what the leaves have to say. So leaves also have that tobacco leaf type aroma going on, with some spice in the background. I'd say I'm not quite sure which one yet, but maybe something in the direction of clove. And there is a certain bottom layer of fruitiness to it, with like a slight tinge of tartness. Very inviting smell for sure. Now let's see what the Shi Banshan has to offer. Let's give this a rinse. Alright. Wake up, Mr. West. I'm also gonna let this sit for a moment, wait for the leaves to sort of come apart a bit. Oh, actually, this is very interesting. The leaves on this one, compared to the Dong Banshan, came apart a lot quicker. I'm not sure why, but it's kind of an interesting observation. Okay. So because of that, I'm pouring this rinse out a bit earlier. Let's see what it smells like. First off, the lid. It still has that sweet tobacco leaf note that I also got on the Dong Banshan, but it's much lighter. And that kind of follows the overall theme of this tea. The aroma of this is a lot more subtle than the one in this. The leaves on this one are quite a bit fruitier than the Dong Banshan. Ooh, that's nice. And at the same time, I'm not quite sure why, but it tastes younger in a way, or it smells younger in a way. It has just a bit of that greenness that I didn't really detect in the Dong Banshan. I wonder how that's gonna carry over to the taste. This one also doesn't have that spice note that I found in the Dong Banshan. But yeah, the fruity note is much, much more prominent. So I've prepared some cups here. Hopefully these will make it possible to show you the color of the liquor. And yeah, let's do the first steep, see how it goes. All right. It's been quite a while since I last made Sheng in a Gaiwan, to be completely honest, but I think for the purposes of this comparison, it's going to be the better option. Also, I'm sorry if there's a bit of thunder in the background. A thunderstorm just started in the middle of this recording. Alright. So, time to decant the Dong Banshan. And the Shi Banshan immediately afterwards. Oh, my fingers are already getting kind of hot. Whew. Yeah, I haven't felt this in a while either. Okay. So, this might be a bit tough to see because these Guy ones gave me more liquid than I expected. But here's the Dong Banshan, and here is the Shi Banshan. I hope you can kind of see it. In terms of color, they're very, very similar. Basically, exactly the same. I can't really detect a difference in hue. Both have a bit of sediment at the bottom. The Shibanshan has a bit more, but that might just be down to pouring technique rather than specific properties of the tea. Okay. Now, what we can look at a bit more comfortably, I think, are the leaves. I'm going to try to show these to you. So, here's the Dongbanshan. Oh my god, this guy one is so hot. My fingers are hurting right now. Whew. And here is... Hang on, I'll shake it a bit. Here is the Shibanshan. I hope you can see these properly. There we go. Not a big difference there either. I'd say they're very similar at first glance. So we can probably assume that the actual plants growing on either side of those mountains are quite similar, and the differences in taste will really mostly be down to what the environment there is like. So I'd say let's start with the Dongbanshan. Or actually, no, let's start with the Shibanshan because that one was a bit more subtle in appearance. Yeah, the tea liquor still smells quite fruity. Let's see what it tastes like. Yeah, so my first impression is that fruity note from the smell persists. I can't quite put my finger on what it is right now, but there's definitely some fruit going on here. There's that greenness that I also noticed in the smell. It still is a bit vegetal, and as a result, it feels a tad younger than the Dongbanshan. I don't think it actually is younger. I think they were both harvested in spring, but it's kind of just an interesting observation to make. Yeah. This is very nice so far. Definitely fairly subtle, fairly approachable. at first glance. Obviously, we're gonna see how it develops as we continue these steeps, but this is giving a nice first impression. Let's see what the Dong Banshan is like. I'm not getting a lot of aroma from the liquor. Yeah, so this isn't as fruity. It has that tobacco leaf type flavor that I noticed earlier. I'd say it's also a tiny bit more astringent than the Shibanshan, but it's a very minimal difference. Neither of them is like very astringent. And that's so if I were to compare these teas after having had not even like the full first steep, I'd say this Shibanshan is a bit more subtle, delicate, approachable, whereas the Dongbanshan is a bit more robust. Yeah, this is quite sweet, quite pleasant, but it's also kind of quiet in a way. It's not very loud, it's subtle. The flavors are all definitely there, but they're they're not like yelling at you. You kind of need to find them yourself. The Dongbanshan, on the other hand, is a lot more upfront. It's after this first steep, I'm actually kind of surprised by uh, how different these teas are from each other. Because like the only thing there is a slight geographical difference. There's probably less than like 10 kilometers between these two villages, and they were both produced by the same producer. Let's see what the second steep has to offer. Maybe we'll find out something new there. It's also very interesting that the Shibanshan opened up quite quickly, whereas the Dongbanshan didn't, but then the Shibanshan was the one to be a fair bit more subtle in flavor. We probably don't need to take too long on these particular steeps, because the tea has fully opened up now in both instances. So I'd say let's just give this a go now. All right. Once again, no real discernible difference in color. The Shibanchan has a bit more sediment once again, but it's not a big difference. Okay. Let's do the Dongbanshan first this time. Okay, I'm getting a bit more bitterness than before now. but it's still totally fine. Like, this is not a bitter tea, in my opinion. However, one thing I should note is I'm already kind of starting to feel something. So at least one of these two teas is causing some kind of reaction. Obviously, it's impossible to say which one of the two since I'm having both at the same time. It might also be both of them, honestly. But given that Linsang teas don't usually have a reputation for causing strong body feel, I think this is a very good sign. Okay, let's do the Shi Banshan once again. Okay. Here's another difference between these two teas. Now we're talking about texture. We already mentioned astringency, with both being quite low, but one of them being a touch more astringent. And now we're looking at viscosity. What are sort of the properties of the tea liquor there? And it seems to me that the Shibanshan is a touch more viscous. Both have decent viscosity overall, but I think the Shibanshan wins in that particular regard. I could see this also being related to that impression that it feels slightly younger in some way. But unfortunately, I don't have a good explanation I can offer there. And the viscosity on the Dongbanshan is also good. It's certainly a viscous tea, but the Shibanshan has that just a touch more that kind of puts it almost in that syrupy category of viscosity. Oh yeah, also, before I forget it and before we get to our third and probably final steep of this video, once again, if you enjoy what I'm doing here and you enjoy me doing videos for nannuoshan on top of live streams, please like, subscribe, and most important of all, let me know in the comments. Any kind of feedback is welcome, and I'd also love to hear everyone's impressions of these particular teas. Yeah, this is nice. The Shibanshan is a very pleasant and approachable tea. The Dongbanshan is a very robust but still friendly tea. Maybe the Dongbanshan could be described as a bit more assertive in a way, if we wanted to paraphrase things. Okay, let's get into the final steep here. Obviously, both of these can go for much longer, but I don't want to keep you all sitting here for too long. And this is kind of just like a first impressions video for both of these teas. I'm probably going to continue this session after the recording and finish it nice and slow over the course of this wonderful Sunday. Okay. I'm going to push these two a bit further in this steep than I normally would, just to see whether they, let's say, develop more bitterness and astringency if they're pushed further. Or if they sort of stay as friendly as they were up until now. Okay. And let's go. Oh, God. Oh, this is so hot. I'm not good at handling a gaiwan. There's a reason why I always use my pot. But we got there. And that's all that counts. So now that I've pushed these teas a tiny bit, they are a bit darker in appearance. Sediment is still about the same as before. Nothing new there. So let's give these a final taste. I'm going to start with the Shibanshan this time, because it was the more subtle tea before, and now that we're pushing it, maybe we'll see bigger changes there. Oh, this is very viscous now. Whew. That's crazy. However, while there is more bitterness, there is not too much bitterness. It's nowhere near that point where it starts being unpleasant. There's a really annoying fly in my room. And what else is there to say now that I push this tea? The flavor is still kind of the same, still very nice. A touch more astringency as well. But I think the main thing to focus on here really is the viscosity in this particular steep, because it is kind of incredible, honestly. This is a really thick tea right now, and I like it. Come on. I'm sorry, these flies are very annoying. Ooh. It's also getting a bit sweeter now again towards the bottom of the cup, and I think this last sip is going to be a really good one, so I'm going to move to the Dong Banshan and save this for last. Let's see what this one's like. Okay. Also higher viscosity here, but not as much of a change as in the Shibanshan. This one is also starting to taste just a tiny bit green now, slightly vegetal, but it's really minor. Like in the Shibanshan, that note was noticeable from the first steep onwards, even in the aroma before we started drinking the tea. And now it's kind of emerging in this Dong Banshan on the third steep after pushing it quite far. Still, this is as robust as ever. There. Oh, this is interesting. Okay. I need to let this aftertaste sink in for a moment, because I just noticed something. The Dongbanshan actually has a good deal of minerality, which I didn't notice in the Shibanshan. So now that I'm sitting here and enjoying the aftertaste of this Dong Banshan, I'm really left with this sort of mineral taste on my tongue. And it kind of goes hand in hand with the slightly higher astringency of this tea. But this mineral note is quite nice. So I'm gonna finish this now. And then let the aftertaste come up again. I almost kind of want to drink a bit of water between these two last sips, just to cleanse my palate and really get that good last impression of the Shi Banshan. Okay. Let's go for the final sip of this session. Very, very viscous. Quite sweet now too. The vegetal note is also a bit stronger still than in the Dong Banshan. And I'm not getting the same kind of minerality in this aftertaste. So, what's my conclusion after 3 steeps? These teas certainly share some similarities. They're hitting fairly similar notes overall, but the way in which they hit them and how that affects the overall impression of the tea makes them end up being quite different. So, the Dong Banshan is a tea that appears to have a somewhat stronger flavor, maybe a bit more robust if you want to call it that, while the Shi Banshan is a bit more delicate. The viscosity on the Shi Banshan is higher, which also makes for a very pleasant mouthfeel overall, while the Dong Banshan has that very interesting minerality going for it in the aftertaste. I think both of these teas are very enjoyable. They're not too similar to each other, so my personal recommendation would be to pick up both and basically do what I did today and do a comparative tasting of the two and see what you can learn from that. And if you do learn something, I'd love to hear about it here in the comments. I'm done with this tasting for now. I hope you all enjoyed it, and as I said, if you want to see more, please let me know. This was Sigi with a video for nannuoshan, and I hope you all will have a wonderful day. Goodbye.